Welcome to the Work, Wealth, and Travel podcast. I'm your host, Nicole, and this podcast is your guide to start creating a lifestyle by design. From entrepreneurship, money and finance, taxes and residencies, and everything in between, this show highlights the nuances of a true global citizen lifestyle. Let's dive in. Ben, welcome to the Work, Wealth, and Travel podcast. So I'm very much so looking forward to diving into all things entrepreneurship, building wealth, and of course, travel in today's episode. But before we dive in, please share with us a little bit more about your story, your journey, where you started, and a little bit about how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Yes. Thank you so much for having me on your show. It's really fantastic to be here. Okay. So I used to run luxury tours for almost 20 years. When I'm talking luxury, I'm talking uber luxury for just a week long tour and event that we would run. For example, we had many families coming, spending $100,000 just for a week. Okay. So when I'm talking about high end to the highest end, really possible, everything was 5-star hotels. And coming out of COVID, because COVID really destroyed our business for a few years there, it was in California. Coming out of COVID, I realized that very scared actually, because my family, this is what I did for my livelihood. I was really nervous. I said, coming back, no one's going to book without travel insurance. And so I became, just like I did everything else in the business, hyper focused on it and saying, real life, not just like go buy Allianz, whatever. No, that's not my vibe. Okay. I want to know who actually pays these bills, which companies are good. You need to understand the policies. And so I know this sounds weird, but I actually got obsessed with travel insurance. I guess there's a lot of worse things I could get obsessed with, but I got obsessed with travel insurance and just figuring out, because to the outside observer, it's a black box. It just seems like there's some hidden person who will, cover you, and like, either they say yes or no, and they deny you. And how do you really know what you're buying? So I started going to all the industry events. And I started really just delving into it. And very quickly, I realized who are the real players? How do these things get paid? I started really diving into the policies themselves, understanding them well. And I started selling them to my own clients. And then I went to all the other tour operators in my niche. And I said, look, you guys are in the same boat. Okay. You got tons of clients coming. No one knows anything about travel insurance. All the people coming don't know what the hell they're buying. No one knows what to do in real life if they have a problem. And so I went to them and I started my company now called Travel Defend, and they started sending all their people to us. Okay. And so why they did that is we as a brokerage, we're a concierge brokerage. We're the only one that exists in America. There's no one else doing what we're doing. Okay. So we have access to every policy in America. It's a concierge service. The heavy lifting of what we do is phone calls primarily. You could buy online as well, but phone calls. People call us. We figure out, okay, what's good for you? Where are you going? How much money is on the line? What would be a good policy for you? And people ask tons of questions. What if my mother gets sick? Whatever. It gets very detailed. We do the paperwork for you. And then most importantly, really, this is the most important part. We don't just sell this to you and disappear. Okay. We bring millions of dollars now to these travel insurance companies. We have tremendous power. We don't add a penny to the cost. We don't add any cost. So if you, let's say, some people call us, say, oh, I found a policy from this for $800. If that's good for you, which maybe it is, we'll sell it to you for the same $800, but you have all of our benefit. We have over 20 employees now, and we have a WhatsApp that's monitored 24 hours a day by our team. So any traveler on their trip, if they need help in real life, they reach out to us. And at this point, I mean, we have hundreds of tour operators, travel agents. We have thousands and thousands of clients. And that's it just really exploded from there. But that's the basic idea, how I got into it.
Interesting. What a cool story. So let's dive into travel insurance. I think, first of all, I am very curious. I think on a high level, you mentioned a lot of people, and it's so true, don't really understand how it works. It's just like some person somewhere in the world on the other end who may or may not pay you. So can you dive into the details of what it really looks like on the back end and how to determine what is a company that you could trust and what is not a company that you could trust?
Right. So there's two answers to that. There is data on payout rates to know which companies by the data pay out easiest. Payout rate is like whoever has a higher payout rate is easiest to pay. But also it's a lot of trial and error. we've done over 25,000 policies in our company in only 3 years. Okay. So you can look at that as we've done barely any marketing. So it's just been growing and growing. Tour operators find out about us, travel agents, luxury clients, everyone just flocks to us. And we've gone through a lot of give and take with companies trying to figure this out. Now we have it down to a fine science, but early on, sure, we had companies that we started working with that we realized very quickly were not good. I can mention names if you really want me to, but the point is it's really because sometimes people will call us and say, oh, I bought a policy with AIG. AIG is fantastic. They're the best because they took care of that one person. That was their experience 17 years ago. But we know, for example, like I can go into a lot of hardships we've had with AIG, for example. Okay. So in many cases, I won't recommend AIG because we have the benefit of working with endless thousands of people. So we have a bird's eye view of everything that's going on. But every situation is so different. People go online and say, what travel insurance should I buy? That's not a question. That doesn't make sense, that question. Where do you live? Where are you going? How expensive is your trip? What type of medical do you need? All these factors decide which company we think is good for you. So it's hard to give like one blanket answer for what people should buy.
Are there certain factors when looking at a policy that are red flags or potential, like this is a company that stands out as one of the better companies?
The most important aspect, the most important thing you must look for in travel insurance is the distinction between primary coverage and secondary coverage. So if you understand just that, you'll be at least 50% ahead of where you are now. And I learned this the hard way through, a lot of dealing with companies. Primary coverage means from step one, the insurance company is saying it's their obligation to pay you, which is what you think you're buying. When you buy travel insurance, you think if you have a problem, they're going to pay you. But many companies hide in the fine print that it's secondary coverage. And this is terrible. It's evil almost because they hide it. It's very hard to realize it. You go through all 50 pages. And secondary coverage means that even the best of companies, if you buy a secondary coverage policy, they will always point the finger elsewhere before paying you and say, yeah, maybe we'll pay you. Maybe someone else is more responsible than us to pay you. And that's a world of hell. You kill yourself trying to get paid in that way. So we kind of learned our lesson over time. Never buy a policy that's not primary coverage. Okay. Like it could be as simple as a medical issue or a baggage delay issue. And they'll just say, get your airline to pay you. And you're like, well, why did I buy this? You slip and trip on your tour and you broke your leg. Maybe your tour company shouldn't have taken you on those steps in Egypt or whatever. It's terrible. It's just a terrible thing that exists. And so no policy ever that you will buy with us will ever be secondary coverage. So that's just one. I get very nerdy into this stuff. I'm probably America's foremost travel insurance expert at this point, honestly. So you get deep. If you want to get real deep, I can go really deep.
I want to.
Just for the layman, you want to?
That's a really good example. So share some more, please.
Cool. That's A1, okay, in terms of what you should really look for. B, if you're looking at there is not going to be any good policy worth anything that's going to have less than $100,000 worth of medical coverage. That's a good tell. Like this, I'm talking about going international. You're American and we deal with American, USA based clients, okay? All travel insurance companies in America can only help people who live in America, okay? So we're talking about Americans leaving America. If you have under $100,000 in terms of medical coverage, it's a tell. Because only the low end policies are going to have less than that. Like if you see it has 15,000, it's crap, right? And why is it crap? Why do I say it's crap? Not just because that medical limit is low, but it's a tell to everything else in the policy, right? The whole game of travel insurance is all about covered reasons. What's covered? You say, oh, my mom is sick, I can't go. Not covered, right? In all these type of policies. So if you want an easy tell, you can look at a couple things. See if the medical is really low. Trip interruption, which we can get into what that is. If that's 125% of your trip cost instead of 150, that's another tell. Like quickly, people ask me, look at a policy, is this good? If I see trip interruption instead of 150% at 125, and I see the medical is, let's say 50,000 or lower, it's just obvious that it's a low end policy. And then you're going to have, instead of 30 covered reasons, right, which is very important. Let's say something comes up at work, you want to get paid. right? That's called required to work. That's very powerful. We see tons of claims for that. Many policies, they cut that out, right? Or you want to get, for your mom is sick, they'll cut out any family members or whatever. We can go all down the list, but cheap policy will have, let's say, 3 covered reasons, 7 covered reasons, right? We want our clients to have policies with 20, 25, 30 covered reasons, because so many often people call us and they're like, oh, I'm not going to cancel. The only reason I would cancel a trip is if ABC happens. And then D, E, F happens all the time. You think people know why they're going to cancel a trip? No, they don't know. They think they know. They don't. We do claims all day here. So point is, you want a policy with a lot of covered reasons. So just as, someone not being an expert, those are like good things to look at. But I would say regardless, and this is not like a sales pitch, I was like, don't sell yourself. Who cares? I mean, the fact is, when you buy on your own, what are you? You're faceless nothing to these companies. That's just a fact. When you buy with us, you have tremendous power. And we're still selling you the same policy. But again, we have our own dedicated claims analyst. And so I really think, not just because I'm doing this, but the reality is, why buy on your own? You're just so nothing to these companies and so hard to get paid in most cases, even good companies, which I have a lot of stories about that too.
Okay, interesting. So I'm curious, price point and time frame. So on average, what does a good policy, a reliable policy that you would sell, what would that price point be? And then what's the minimum and maximum that someone can be covered if they're looking to, of course, still stay within the American system and still be a citizen of the US, but probably live abroad long term? Is that something that travel insurance would be able to help with, or would that be a different type of insurance?
It's a little different type. Typically, travel insurance caps at 6 months, but there are policies that we could sell from insured nomads, for example, that are built for U.S. people abroad. So we can help people like that as well. But your first question is an important question. What makes travel insurance expensive? Or what decides the price of travel insurance? Because people have no clue, right? And it's actually important to know. If you are going on an expensive trip and you're older, the older you get, the price be very expensive. If you're going on a cheap trip and you're old, it will still be more expensive, but relatively cheap. Young person, is always cheap. But if the insurance company has to turn around and give you $50,000, okay, let's say you booked a $50,000 safari, African safari. That's very nerve-wracking for them, especially a good company, because you could even have a cold and that's enough. You could say, I have a cold, I'm not feeling well, I can't go. You get a doctor to verify that, sign a particular form called attending physician statement form, and they have to give you $50,000, okay? That's common. Oh, my daughter is also whatever, sick, this, that. So that's what scares travel insurance companies the most. The medical coverage on the trip, that's cheap. Medical is cheap. But what really makes it expensive is these expensive trips. Like, for example, we just did a policy a couple of days ago here. Their couples were traveling together almost in their 80s. They were 78, 79 years old, something like that. Each couple was $90,000 trip, okay? Their travel insurance was just under $20,000, okay, which is, again, not terrible. It's around 10% of their trip cost, right? 10% of trip cost is $18,000. So it's not a terrible price. Like, again, they're almost 80. So they paid 11, 12% of trip cost. But a young person going on a trip that doesn't really cost them much could be $50. So you have tremendous wide variance and ranges in terms of price in travel insurance. And no one can know what a price is going to be without knowing dates of birth. Also, what state you live in. Different states are more expensive. Some states are cheaper. How expensive is your trip? You don't have to protect your whole trip, but that's a decision you can make with us on your, when we're talking to you on our team. Okay, you have 50 grand on the line, maybe protect 25 of it, and then you'll hit a price point that makes sense for you. There's in some policies, they do require you to protect all 50,000, but most don't. So there's tremendously wide variance in price there.
Interesting. Okay. Well, definitely a wide range, but it does give some sort of an idea of a quality plan and what that price would be. What about your travel insurance or any travel insurance in conjunction with credit card insurance. What does that look like? Is that reliable? Talk to us about that.
Right. So credit card coverage is a problem because people think that they're covered and they're really not, right? We talked about covered reasons. Credit cards will water it down to maybe 3 covered reasons. Many credit cards also won't protect anything over a $10,000 trip. We do a lot of luxury clients here, so that's not going to be protective. Also, there's no medical coverage with credit cards. What I find credit cards are really good at is like little things like bag delay. If your bags are delayed at the airport, things like that, credit cards can help. But think about it logically. Like if a travel insurance company, that couple I told you about before, those 2 couples is charging 20 grand. Okay. If they do that on a mass scale, it can bankrupt their credit card. Okay. Like it's not worth it. They're not giving you real travel insurance. It's ludicrous, ridiculous. In most cases, people are falsely under a false assumption that they're covered. And that's really the biggest problem because then we get people calling us saying, and they didn't even buy a policy with us, but they're like, I need help. I'm fighting with my credit card for 8 months. They're not helping me. What I have found is if you have a black card or you have something that's super, super, super premium, like top of the top, sometimes they'll just throw you cash because they want to just like keep you happy. So I have seen that before. Like in Israel, I'll give you an example. On October 7th, when there was the terrorist attack in Israel, we had at that time over 4,000 clients in Israel at that one time. Okay, you see the volume that we do. And some of our clients needed to get out. Many of them need to get out of Israel, and there were no flights out. So many of them purchased private jets and things like that. And due to the rules of travel insurance, there's always like a max limit that they'll pay. And so one of our clients, I think he got like 70 grand for travel insurance back, but there was an extra 10 that was the limit on his policy. And so his credit card, even though they didn't cover it, he had a black card. They just threw him 10 grand. They were like, whatever, we appreciate you. You're in the black card membership level. And they just threw him 10 grand. So that's going to happen, but that's not real travel insurance from credit card. That's not by the rules. So by the rules, you'd be in big trouble because they would have classified that as a war and they wouldn't have covered you. Like Allianz covered nobody for what happened in Israel. It's a travesty. I mean, it's crazy. Even the U.S. State Department was trying to get people out. If you remember, DeSantis in Florida sent a private jet to get people out, Florida residents. The U.S. State Department was trying to get flights. I think they did in the end. Maybe it took them like 2 weeks to get flights out because people couldn't leave and they were very freaked out. We had people who fainted and went to the hospitals. It was crazy. And we have the 24-hour assist company. The CEO of it's called Robin Assist. That's the 24-hour assist company for many travel insurance companies. We have their CEO's personal cell phone number. So we were calling him and getting all of our people to the front of the line and getting them out and getting them paid. Because again, we bring a lot of power to the situation. So that's where I saw like a lot of people with credit card stuff were calling us and they were in big trouble and they couldn't get out. They couldn't even get a hotel room because no one could leave and everyone was in hotels. And so it was like crazy. But credit cards are dangerous in the sense that people think they're covered for things they're not. And that's what I find, that you can get really harmed in that way from credit cards.
What about I guess a standard plan when somebody is traveling abroad? Is that going to be mostly inclusive of health, or do you see a lot of times, again, in a standard plan where that includes laptop coverage and camera coverage and all the appliances and the lost luggage, or is really the core of what you're looking for and what you're paying for going to be the medical aspect?
Most good, normal, I don't know what you mean by standard, but if you mean from like a plan that we would trust to sell you, it's going to have medical. It's going to have, think of it in this way, all the in-trip benefits. What are the in-trip benefits, right? You have medical, obviously. You have trip delay, baggage loss, right? These are included in a typical policy. But the trip cost aspect, because we're talking about just the in-trip benefits. When you're talking about, my trip cost me $5,000, that's where if you can't go, they can give you $5,000 back. Or if you're on your trip, it's called trip interruption. those are benefits that are tied to your trip cost. How expensive is your trip? So if you're doing a very cheap trip, I recommend no one put $0 as their trip cost, because many companies won't accept that as a policy. And ones that do, they pay them out at much lower rates. So we try and put all of our clients at $1,500 trip cost minimum, meaning even if your trip costs you $800, put up $1,500, because those get paid out at a rated level. They get paid out much higher. You could think that like, oh, travel insurance, they're just robots. They're not. They look at you buying this cheap policy, and many of them either A, won't sell it to you, or if they do, they crap on you basically. So we like to put $1,500 a person as base, but it's still cheap. It'll still cost $80. It's not expensive. But then if something happens to you, like in Israel, trip interruption will pay for your flights home and get you out. And so if you put $0 as your trip cost, there's no dollars there to help you in that Israel situation, for example. So that's why it's really important to put some sort of a trip cost on there to make sure that there's money to help you. Like that guy that told you got paid 70 grand, right? It would have been 150% of whatever he protected. So maybe he protected 50 grand, and maybe, I don't know, I have to do the math, but whatever 150% of that would be 70 grand. That's why he got a max of 70, right? But if he would have put very low amounts, the insurance company would not have, paid for his flights out and stuff like that. So it's just important to do that. Put $1,500 a person as your minimum trip cost is also one of the things that you should do.
Okay, interesting. So I think that gives a lot of good information and value from the travel insurance perspective. I'd like to move over to the entrepreneurship side and talk a little bit. I know you mentioned in the beginning about growing and building the business and what that has looked like, but I'm curious some of the obstacles, challenges you faced in the fairly short amount of time that you have been running the business, and also the growth of obtaining clients, if that's mostly through networking, connections. It sounds like from what you alluded to, but curious about what that journey has looked like as well.
Yeah. So what's interesting about that is like when you start a business, right? Because I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. When you start a business, I started this tour, luxury tour company 17 years, I guess 20 years ago now. You don't know if you're going to be successful. And these ideas now, the way I'm describing it, and now that, thank God we are successful, it's so obvious. It's like, oh, of course this makes sense. Why would I ever buy travel insurance any other way other than buy with you? It makes sense now. But even my business partner, who I love, like a brother, okay, we grew up together, he thought this was a terrible idea. He didn't want to be involved. So he said no, and he moved on when I told him, I think I want to really start looking into this. And so my point is, as kind of like to myself as well and to other people as inspiration, it's really hard to know if you have a good idea on your hands, right? You have to let the market almost tell you that you have a good idea. If you're pushing up and you see that you're working for years, a lot of people like to just, I got to put more effort. I got to push. Sometimes you're in the wrong vehicle, right? And I think that is a hard reality because many times entrepreneurs can't see themselves and they don't realize that it's not that you're not working hard enough. It's just your product's crap, or it's just, and so it's tough to know am I in a bad vehicle or am I just not hitting it yet? And so I'm very realist with myself. And when this started, I'll give you an example. We started this with my tour company, right? Selling to my own clients. And then I went to some other stuff. But that event ended in the end of April. It was an event we ran once a year. That was all I did, that event. I worked the whole year on it. When that event ended, and all the tour companies in my niche that we were working with, all their events also ended end of April, we figured okay, it's done, right? Travel insurance is done. And I remember it ended April 30th. This is one of the seminal moments of my life, honestly. And a phone call came in May 1st. And I remember sitting there looking at the phone and I was like, what the hell? What? And I answered the phone and it was just some guy going on a trip and he wanted travel insurance and nothing to do with any of this stuff. And I was so blown over. I was like, really? I didn't say it to him, but in my mind, I was like, what the hell? And he's like, yeah, my brother, told me about it, whatever. And I was so shocked. That was the moment that I realized holy crap, maybe this is real. And then it started growing and growing. I think that month alone, the month after, we probably sold like $50,000 or $60,000 in travel insurance premium just that month after, when I thought it would be at zero. And then I was like, okay, we definitely have something here. And so the way I've grown it, I've never had to ever, I'm going to, by the way, but I haven't done it yet, put any money into marketing, not a penny. I simply go to tour operators, travel agents, and explain to them what we do. Because if you care about your clients, which all these people really do, especially luxury people, they know their core business is not travel insurance. I can meet any tour operator. They don't know anything about it. And we're like, look, you care about your clients, send them to us. Our team is going to help them. We kick you back commission anyway. And it's just like a slam dunk. And then we just started growing from there. I get calls all the time from tour operators, just heard from someone else wanting to work with us. So I'm saying we have that. It's been, listen, this is very rare and it's really special. And I know that because I've run my own many businesses before. I've never had success like this. And so that's what I'm saying is like, when you really find something good, it's not, you don't have to kill yourself. Like you really just have to, push it. But I do work hard. I do push it. But I mean, we have 20 employees now. I mean, it's crazy, in 3 years. So it's really growing.
Yeah, and I appreciate you being transparent and sharing that journey, because I think you're totally right. A lot of entrepreneurs will push for years when it's just not working, when there is something that could be more aligned with them or some low-hanging fruit that they're just not seeing, but it's there and it's been there the whole time.
Right. I love that example because not seeing it. And I promise you, I have no ego about this. I swear to you, I don't. But like, I think about it and I say, how many other tour operators were there in America who could have seen this opportunity and didn't? Because I'm the only Travel Defend. We're the only brokerage that exists in America. Meaning right now, when you go to buy, you either go to Allianz or AIG, you see the one or two options they have for you. You don't know what the hell you're looking at. Or you go to Expedia type site that has 1,000 options. What we do doesn't exist. And so I'm like, could anyone else have seen this? They could have. Why didn't they? I don't know why. But I think it's a matter. I'll give you an example. Like during COVID, right? I got really destroyed bad. We didn't make money for 3 years. Okay. I wasn't in this yet. I was a luxury tour operator and I'm married with kids. It was like a big problem. And I was so distraught and broken by what happened. And I know it happened to millions of people, not just myself. I had friends of mine who made a killing during COVID. Okay. I have friends that opened up COVID clinics. All they did was get a storefront, hire a nurse, buy these rapid tests. It's nothing. You don't need any license. You don't need to be anything special. And they were charging like $100 a pop. Okay. And they had lines out the door. I couldn't see that opportunity. Why? Why could I not see it? Because I was so distraught in like my own sadness and like freaking out and fear. But that opportunity was there for anybody. Okay. Me and you could have done that in literally like a week. We could have thrown that together and made a killing. I had friends that were in shampoos and blah, blah, blah. That was like their business, like beauty products. They got into hand sanitizer, started selling crap ton of hand sanitizer. And the point is, these opportunities are always out there, but most people are just blind to what's in front of their face. And I use this example, maybe cliche, but I find it really hit me pretty hard. Like if I say to you today, how many red cars have you seen today? Right? You're going to say, well, I don't know, maybe 2 if you think about it. If I told you I'm going to give you 10 grand for every red car you see, you're going to see them. And so my point is they're there. Whether you see them or not, they're there. And so again, I don't say this to like toot my own horn or whatever. It's not about that. It's just trying to realize I feel blessed. I don't feel that I did anything super intelligent. I tell my wife, she gets annoyed with me how often I'm like, I tell her, like, do you appreciate how special this is? Like crazy. And she's like, okay, enough already. But for me, no, I never stop being appreciative. And I don't think it's me. I think that it's just luck really or something. I just saw it and went with it. And I feel very, very blessed,
Yeah, well, it's really interesting to hear that journey. I think it really puts, for a lot of entrepreneurs, probably into perspective. So wrapping up, are there any last words, anything that you think that is important to touch on, whether it be entrepreneurship or the travel insurance side that we have not yet?
Yeah, I guess my only kind of like, thing that I would mention is like my nephew came to me, for example, and he said, I want to buy a company, which I don't necessarily recommend. I don't think it's a good idea, but he wanted to buy a company. It was a Turkish towel business. And so he was showing me all the finances of it. And I simply said one question to him. I said, what's the differentiator here? I mean, there's 8 billion Turkish towel companies. I can go to Walmart. I can go to Target. I can buy, I'm sure, very beautiful Turkish towels. What is the differentiator here? And he couldn't tell it to me. He couldn't figure it out himself. He just looking at the numbers, and which in the end, I think there were a lot of false numbers there. But the point is, as an entrepreneur, you have to ask yourself, what is my differentiator? Why am I special? Okay. You can't be doing something. And by the way, you'd be surprised how often people don't think of this. I open a pizza shop because I like pizza. Yeah, people do like pizza. But why would this be special? Is it because it's right next to Yankee Stadium and everyone's going to, you got to be honest with yourself. And I think that's the most important part of being an entrepreneur is the honesty factor, and find where are you special and then give tremendous value. Once you give tremendous value, more than even the value we give here for not adding a penny is insane. You don't even realize. You go read our Google reviews. You'll see that what we do, the lengths we go to get people paid when we're not getting paid extra for this. You give that and the people will respond in kind. That's the main entrepreneurial kind of focus that I think is important to note, as a final parting word.
Yeah, I like that. And I think in different cultures, and me having traveled pretty extensively, especially here in Latin America, I realized that there are everywhere in the world certain factors of business that if you just excel in one of these areas that is so core and important to any business succeeding, it will grow exponentially. And what I realize in Latin America that I've shared before is customer service. If you start any business in anything, it doesn't matter what, you can open a pizza shop. If you have the best customer service, if you are actually on Google, if you actually answer your WhatsApp, if you actually answer your phone. And so that is one thing that I've realized in Latin America that could definitely be taken advantage of.
They don't have the American drive.
They really don't. I've never once in a restaurant, as a quick example, in North America, me being from Canada, or if you go to America and the meal is not what you expected, it's cold, it's whatever, they'll give you a discount, they'll bring you something else, they'll give you a full refund. Not the case when you head south of the US. Right. It's astonishing. And so there's certain factors, I think, as well in business where if you just excel, you have the same business as Joe down the street, but you excel in one or two certain areas, it can grow exponentially.
Well, make something special about it. I don't know if this is where you are. I know you're in Mexico. I don't know if this exists where you are. But when I was in Playa or Cancun or something like that, I was with my son. He's little. He was like 5 years old. And so he's just starting to read. And I noticed that he kept saying farmacia, farmacia. Everywhere you go, by the way, I'm not exaggerating. It'll freak you out if you really focus on it. Every block is like 1 to 2 pharmacies, like everywhere. Do you ever know? Is that where you are also? It's crazy. And so you have to wonder, are they all profitable? Does that make sense? There's going to be a pharmacy on every block. And so, I would go into that business, but I would just find some angle because obviously it's a good business, I guess, if everyone's doing it. But I didn't see anything that by walking by that I saw there was anything special about any one over another. But imagine there was. I mean, that guy could kill. Oh, my God. So, yeah. No, I hear you. I agree with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So where can everyone find the business online?
Just go to traveldefend.com. So simple as that. No hyphens, no nothing. Just travel defend. We defend you. And you could call us as well. I mean, really, the phone number is primarily how people reach us. It's 1-800-578-2871. We have our whole staff standing by, ready to help you. And yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your insider tips on the industry.
Sure. Happy to do it. Thanks for having me.
You've just listened to the Work, Wealth, and Travel podcast. If anything from this episode resonated with you, I would appreciate if you share this podcast on your socials. And of course, be sure to tag me. And don't forget to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for joining me on this global citizen journey, and I'll see you in the next episode.